name is William Vladimir Dmitri Bortnichuk, and I'm going to do a lecture on the divine principle, which has been taught by Reverend Sun Myung Moon for many years. Reverend Moon taught that only 80% of divine principle has been revealed. So when he died, for most of the Unification Church, only 80% has been revealed to be understood. That means there's 20% that hasn't been revealed. What is that 20%? So I was very fortunate. When I was a young man, 17 years old, I switched on Radio Luxembourg one day, and I heard a statement from a DJ who's still alive now, Tony Prince, and he said, from 1917 to 1930, the Messiah was born. This is the revelation, remarkable revelation of the Unification Church, founded by Reverend Sun Myung Moon. The minute I heard that statement, I thought, the Bible is a formula. That makes sense. Everything has to happen according to formulaic requirements. So I listened in every night. I listened in as Divine Principle was taught between the pop songs that were popular in 1972, and I listened to Divine Principle lectures. They were being introduced by Tony Prince, but they were being conducted by Dave Christian. He died some years ago. I wish I was able to go and thank him for what he did to introduce Divine Principle, because it was an awakening for me. When I was a young man, I wasn't baptized at birth, and when I was about 10 years old, I was with my brothers and my rest of my family. I was in a convent, St. Vincent's Convent in Mill Hill, for a short while, and they introduced me to the idea of Christianity, and I was baptized at about 10 years old. And what I heard about Jesus was very interesting, and they used to give me lessons. I used to go each week to listen to lessons about the Bible, and I was supposed to memorize question and answer, but I was never able to memorize the question and answer. But I always listened to what I was taught. I wanted to figure it out for myself. So I remember one day going up to the bus stop from St. Vincent's Convent, standing there and thinking, because they just told me that day, they said, Jesus died. So they've been telling me about Jesus. I had no idea Jesus died on the cross. Isn't that amazing? I had no idea that Jesus died on the cross. They were teaching me about Jesus. He seemed like a wonderful person that you'd want to pull your chair up and just listen to. And yet the people around him seemed to be so immature. So even at 10 years old, I concluded, when I was told that he died on the cross and he was killed, that nobody wanted to protect him. Everyone was not thinking about God's point of view, but they were thinking about their own point of view. They didn't really care about Jesus. I thought, it's very sad. I wish I'd been alive at that time, just to sit and properly listen to him, what he had to say. So that was quite a revelation for me as a young man, 10 years old, standing at the bus stop, just thinking how incredible it must have been to actually live at the time of Jesus and listen to him. Anyway, 7 years went by. I switched on Radio Luxembourg one night, because when I was young, there was no YouTube, there was no internet. All there was were the pirate radio stations and Radio Luxembourg, which was a legal station but non-government station in Luxembourg. And they had just put in new transmitters at Beldweiler so that you could hear the music without it fading in and out constantly, which it did on medium wave. They were broadcasting on long wave, which was nearly 144,000 meters. An interesting number. They also broadcast on 208, sounds like 208. So when I heard that this formula between 1917 and 19, the Messiah was born, I was completely taken aback. Because when I was a young man, I had thought deeply in that moment, after I heard Jesus had died, that his disciples hadn't wanted to protect him. I thought to myself, if only I could have lived in that time. So that kind of feeling re-emerged, that we are living, at that time, we're living in the age of the returning Messiah. It's an incredible feeling. Without perhaps that feeling from when I was a young man, maybe that statement would have meant nothing. I'm sure millions of people listened to that statement and it meant nothing to them. But to me it meant something. It was incredible. So after I listened to the 4 lectures, I listened to the lectures each day for 4 days, and the lectures were stopped by the management because they were very controversial. They talked about the very controversial issue of the 6 Marys and other such issues which became controversial for the unification movement. So I heard the kind of materials which weren't taught many years later. They were kept aside on the basis that people wouldn't understand. So I heard those materials, and I was partly shocked, the idea that Messiah would come back and would have many brides, even though in the Bible there is a prophecy that of the wise virgins, 12 wise virgins. I was still kind of shocked, but for the first time in my life I experienced the Holy Spirit. So when I was a young man, they would teach, they would give a kind of a diagram with the people receiving the Holy Spirit in the Catholic Church. I was the Catholic teaching place I was attending. They would give a picture of someone with like a candle on their head. You know, the fire of the Holy Spirit was coming to them. So I thought, Jesus sounds wise, and so I thought that's probably true, but I've never experienced the Holy Spirit. So back in 1972, in March, early March, I experienced the Holy Spirit for the first time in my life, listening to Divine Principle. And I was absolutely raptured. I can only say I was raptured. So I always say to people, the rapture has already happened. Tony Prince, who used to, when he used to introduce his program, he always had a trumpet.